Hello and welcome to today's episode of Real Life, Real Love. I am Sarah Michelle and I am a sex, love, and intimacy coach. I help men, women, and couples create long-lasting relationships, improve their connection, improve communication, enjoy their sex lives more, all that good stuff. And this is Hayley. Hayley, you want to share who you are and what you do?
My name is Hayley. I am based in Brisbane, Australia. I was born in New Zealand, so I have a bit of a hybrid accent. I am a stylist. I typically help women want to dress and feel better every day. So I do love photo shoots and events and costume, everything like that. But typically my heart is in you having your best day every day. How to make your wardrobe a functioning tool that you get to use and express for yourself and for the outside world to get the messages across. Because people forget, like, colors are associated with specific feelings or life emotions, and there's reasons why we don't wear pajamas to the boardroom. There are reasons why we may love a specific neckline, or there's reasons why we may hate a specific hemline. There's so much that goes into clothes. Even typically people who say, I don't care, they care. That's a level of care. So I help women process through traumas, stuck emotions, things inside their wardrobe, so they can just love getting dressed and feel empowered and confident in showing up every day in their life how you choose. Some days you're like, do you know what? I want to be cool and classy today. Other days you're like, I'd love to be like siren sexy, and how to pull that off inside your existing wardrobe. So it's not about like, well, I need to buy new stuff all the time. It's how to make your wardrobe work as a tool for you.
You just said something super fun, so I was making a note about it. I think we're going to make a future episode out of it. But for today's episode, we are talking about, is he playing games with you? And what's going on? So recently you shared a TikTok with me that was of this viral TikTok about a girl who this guy had been pursuing her for like 4 years, I think is what she says. And she'd been telling him, no, no, no. She finally says, okay, you can take me out on a date. And he takes her out on the date, but towards the end of it, he's just a total ass to her. And she's really confused by it. So we kind of want to talk about, you know, how we get caught up in these situations with these men that are playing games with us. And I also want to take it, like, after we talk about that a little bit further, I'd like to take it a step further and talk about how it's not, like, we don't need to take it on. It doesn't have to be about us and us changing and our healing and all that sort of stuff. But we can get to that a second. So why don't we start talking then about these situations where we've had guys play games with us, and maybe like what brought it on, what we think it means, that sort of stuff. Do you have a situation in mind, an example you can think of?
I do, because that TikTok really triggered me to go, wow, we typically, I think in our minds, like, think of, you know, teenage boys or when we're young and in our early 20s, and, you know, the player, somebody playing games in and out, I think by default we think of it as being a short-term game, situation, response, like the whole thing. And with that TikTok and how it like completely blew up, I can't remember who the original creator was or the one that I saw, which was a Stitch. But what I thought was very fascinating was like the aha moment, the longevity of the willingness of somebody who wants to act from their ego or spitefulness. Or the thing that clicked the most for me, like in all the years of study, self-help, healing, all the healers, all the books, all the courses, all the programs, all like the meditations, the crying nights, everything that I've moved through, I never once had clicked the pieces of, what if I had spent basically 6 months rejecting a person, not intentionally. I was very clear. I was saying, I don't want a relationship. 8 months prior, I had broken up with basically the perfect guy. He wasn't, but basically, like if I was going to pick one, he would be it. But it was not quite right. I was like, do you know what? He's like, you just want to go out and have fun. I'm like, yeah, but like, don't touch me. Like, I was not the type of person who was like, I want to go out and like get with people. I was like, the last thing I want is like, I just want to go to work. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I was a new graduate, loving working in design. And I just wanted to have fun with friends. I wasn't studying anymore. I just wanted fun. I didn't want the stress and I didn't want the pressure. And so when I met somebody else, not intentionally, it was a flatmate situation who had set me up with his friend after I'd had a few drinks, and I was like, yeah, yeah. And then the next day I was like, no, no. And that happened a couple of times. And not until this TikTok did I realize that may have been basically 6 months of rejection for this person who kept pursuing me. I was busy. I was very clear. I was very honest. That person pursued me very hard to the point where I ended up in a relationship with him. And within 3 months, I now look back and just go, how did I not see this? He started on this like toxic situation where I was unable to leave. I was in a different country. I didn't have the finances. I was being emotionally manipulated, financially manipulated, so many things. Like I got to this point where I was stuck. And then it became physically threatening with me. It was just like this intense situation where I then didn't leave. And then after not leaving at that point when I was trying to, I stayed with him for like another 4 years. And now that I look back, because it took everything in my soul to leave him, I now look back and think, shit, what if, based on a collaboration of his, because some people act in the world as though they're the victim, and they will use their life circumstances to constantly expect other people to do for them. Expect you to clean up after them, expect you to emotionally help them process their stuff, like lean on you essentially. And if you're a codependent, or if you've got any tendencies to be a people pleaser, or like it's like this massive cocktail of things where you just end up in a situation where you're like, because I look back and think, how did I end up in that situation? Like I spent my entire childhood promising I never would. And then I ended up in my early 20s so stuck. I left the shell of a person. And it's like the most in-depth, complex way of saying that could have just been, you know, a 2-month situation. In our minds, I think we think of it as short term, that somebody may play games. And we think of it as he's just going to play for a little while and I may get involved or I may not and I may get hurt and I will move on. But what if, under the right cocktail of circumstances, a person is willing to put you through years of torture? They may not have thought, I'm going to do years of torture, but we get into these habits and these cycles and we keep turning up and we keep saying yes, even though we don't want to. We feel obligated. We feel we have to. We feel this is do or die. Like I had no options. I couldn't just leave. I was trying so hard. Like, trigger warning, when I did try to leave, literally on the what are they called? Laptop. I was gonna say team play. On the laptop, and I was like literally looking for a new home. He came in from the other room, grabbed the laptop, smashed it on the floor in front of me, smashed it on the chair. It's like literally everywhere around me. I lost years worth of photos. I lost so much stuff that wasn't backed up. I was immediately thrown into a situation where I was like, like I thought my life was in danger. It was like a reenactment of childhood situations with my dad. I left the room. I go into the other room, lock the door. He breaks in through the door, and I felt like I was going to die. And I then became trapped in this relationship with this person who then constantly used that against me. And it's not a conversation that a lot of people have, because people think, you know, violence, it has to be that person pushed you. And I know a lot of people only recognizes that. It wasn't until leaving that relationship 2 years later that I learned about emotional abuse. I learned about all the other kinds of abuse, whether they're withholding money or threatening you in different kinds of ways. Like, there are so many things that are, I'm losing my words, but it's like core life vital things. And it really clicked watching this TikTok that what if we make assumptions that games, like the player type games, or a man who's been rejected, the lengths he's willing to go to, are short term gains. What if there is potential? Because it may not even be a conscious thought. Like, we talk about that a lot right here. We talk about whether a person is conscious or not conscious. They can still do the same thing. They may just not be aware of the toxicity of what they're doing or the choices that they're making. And if somebody's in their victimhood, if they're in a situation where they're only coming from wounds, like the conversations when I reflect back on, you know, what he would say to me as a response is like, well, I never got that in my childhood, or my mom never did this, or like he never, you know, stood on his 2 feet, shoulders back, confident who he is, and owned his emotions. And I think these are important things to talk about, because what if somebody is willing to play the long game with you? And if you are the person that gets triggered by that and just go, oh, I can make different choices. I can say, what if I actually had thought that? And I thought, like, the things that I've thought is, I'm a bad person if I think negative about other people. I used to honestly believe that. And I wouldn't leave terrible situations because I'd be like, well, I'm being the bad person. Or he's never had anybody there for him. Or, and that short term thing, like, well, obviously he's not playing a game. We live together. Like, so many thoughts. And I just stayed.
Yeah, I think you bring up a few patterns that are interesting because we grow up and watch these movies, right? Like these Hollywood rom-coms and stuff. And we believe that we should be pursued and that the harder he tries to pursue us, the more into us he is.
Yeah.
But it's not always the truth. Sometimes there, like you said at the very beginning, sometimes it's just his ego at play. And it's just trying to prove to himself that he can get someone this pretty, this intelligent, who makes this much money, whatever the goal is for him, you know? And it's almost like it could be, but doesn't have to be, like a narcissistic sort of thing. It's filling himself up by proving to himself that he can accomplish whatever this is. And so you're nothing more than an object, really, a goal for him to accomplish. And we get caught up in the story of, oh, he's worked so hard to get me. That's so romantic. He must really like me or maybe even love me. And then we start to build out this relationship and we get more committed. And it just allows it to play out longer and longer because someone who's willing to do that sort of stuff doesn't have a healthy foundation. So that guy that's willing to do this sort of stuff probably lacks self-reflection, the ability to self-reflect, the ability to improve himself, you know, and do the self-development work and stuff. But we don't see that because we can self-reflect. We can do the personal development. And oftentimes the women who are targeted with this sort of stuff are women who are accomplished in some other area of their lives, but they've got work to do in their relationship area, whether it's around codependency or maybe they were raised in an abusive environment in some way, or, you know, some sort of childhood thing that's now playing out. So yeah, I find that really fascinating. I actually in the last year had someone who was the first person I'd really considered. Well, you know, now that I say that, I was going to say the first person I really considered played games with me. But I did have this one guy in high school that I did not get at the time, but he was absolutely playing games with me. But this guy that happened to recently, it was really kind of an awakening to my own ego, to be completely honest, because I had been so accustomed to guys pursuing me and me being the one who rejects and not them rejecting me. sorry. But I had gotten so used to that pattern that I felt a certain sense of safety. Like I felt like a little bit of control over. So when we were in the getting to know each other stage, I suppose I was a little cocky or arrogant. I mean, I didn't intend to be, but I had this mindset of like, I was deciding whether or not I was going to reject him. I wasn't even considering the fact that he could be using me or potentially rejecting me at some point.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned my lesson because he was there for the game of it. And once we got to the point of having sex, done from there. Not even polite after that. And it wasn't even like, okay, we had sex and then 2 days later, 2 weeks later, whatever, we have sex again. It was like, we had sex, he left within a half hour, and we were done. He just wanted to get to the point of, I guess, being able to say he had sex with me, or maybe being able to say, I whatever. It must have had to do something with that, because as soon as we had it, it was like, done, gone. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and we forget that. I think there's two things I probably should bring up based on what I said in our conversation. I think in our minds, we make the assumption, because when we're typically when a woman commits, or we're in a committed, we've, like you say, self-reflected, made these decisions, and we make the assumption a man is as committed as us. We make the assumption. We have the conversation, he can say yes. We're like, well, he's got his name on the house, or, he has a ring on his finger. And we make these assumptions that this person is just as much in it as us. But we also, at the same point in time, we've all said it, and we've gone, how did he just have no regard for any of the commitments? Because he didn't have them in the beginning. He's the person who can just say yes and get away with it. And the other thing I did want to say is that TikTok, and at the end, so he pursued her for 4 years. She said yes on the date, and to the date, on the date at the end, he gets another girl on the phone as they're walking. So I liked how everybody just involved their phones. She whips her phone out, and you can see that she's looking like she's not recording anything. She's just doing the voice. And he puts this other girl on speakerphone and is dissing the date that he's on, the person he just spent 4 years getting. And in the TikTok, and the aha moment for so many people in the comments and who stitched it was, I don't understand. If he spent 4 years pursuing her, why would he then at the end of the date get on a call with a different girl, like a different boo, and say, hey, and diss the date that he just spent 4 years getting? And everybody was like, oh my God, when this person stitched it and said it's because his ego was hurt and he wanted to humiliate her. He was so hurt. He was, these 4 years of asking, he'd got to the point where he was so whatever driven by whatever negative energy or whatever was the thing, it doesn't really matter, that he wanted to humiliate her because it took him 4 years. He didn't really at that point actually want to pursue her with his heart and his soul. It was just a game. And what clicked for so many people, and in that bit we're realizing that people don't always play games short term, and men say yes and commit, but not in the ways that we do, and it doesn't mean anything. Like, an ex once literally went away to a different country and came back and had cheated on me the whole time, and I felt it when he walked in, and he was so rude to me when he got back. And he told me a few months later how he cheated on me. I was like, ugh, gross. I knew it. Like, you feel like just because you're in a relationship, they won't forego their commitments, or they'll hold up security because you will. We make the assumptions. We don't realize that a person who may have been rejected or humiliated by us may basically just wait until their opportunity to do it back to us. Like, yes, that's not a healthy person, but we're all in different stages of relationships and healing. Like you just said before, you may be very accomplished in one area of your life and may need, or have the opportunity, let's not label it, for healing or relationship stuff or intimacy stuff or whatever it is in a relationship that's like your gritty point. And I think it's so fascinating that what if you can remove yourself from feeling so like the tentacles of your heart are like inside this relationship and the situation. If you pull back a little bit and look at it for what it is, like, you know, how our best friends look at our relationships and how we talk to our best friends and they give us that feedback. If we can do that for ourselves in different situations and let ourselves off the hook, like, what if I didn't and wasn't the cause and the problems for that relationship ending up the way it was? What if that person was very unhealthy and toxic? And my part is figuring out what I would like to do with that information now. And what if I don't spend my time blaming my
Exactly. I mean, that's how I dealt with the situation that I was telling you about with this guy. Is like I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, what was my part in this? And then I let go of everything else. And so for me, it was that kind of, I felt like it was that arrogance around just assuming that I was the decision maker of if we move forward. But then the other thing, as I reflected, was like I was genuinely here getting to know this person until I had decided we didn't have any future together, you know? So like I was genuinely there to progress the relationship and he wasn't. So I'm not going to take responsibility for his actions. And I'm also not going to feel guilty for the fact that I did have sex with him because I did it from a place of choice. I did it from a healthy place, I guess is what I'm saying. I didn't do it as a way to manipulate him. I didn't do it as a way to use him, like any of that sort of stuff. It was genuine connection from the time we'd been together. So I was like, I just kind of washed my hands of it. It was like, you know, that's him. It's not on me. And he just doesn't have a place in my life anymore. And so I removed him, you know, from social media and from my phone. And that was that. Yeah. And I think that more women need to be able to do that. Now, I know that probably some women listening to this are going to be like, yeah, but that was pretty short term. And there's going to be other women that are in situations like you described that, you know, I mean, you talked about years with this person and a lot of abuse that went along with it. So it's not as easy in those situations because you have so much history together and so much like physical connection, like where your brain really starts to rewire and your hormones change and stuff like that because you're chemically and biologically getting connected to this other person. And I didn't have as much of that because this was over the span of maybe 2 months at most. But I still think even if it's a longer process, you have to go through that, like, what can I learn here? Mm-hmm. Is there any gift in this for me? And then like, what can I let go of? What part isn't mine that I can let go of? Because if you sit there and beat yourself up and try to replay it or say, what if I did it this way? Or I should have seen that. Like, it's not really, I should have seen that. It's, oh, I see that now. And moving forward, I'll pay attention and be aware. You know?
Yeah.
Because the should have creates too much guilt and it's too much. I mean, it could even create shame, but it's just so much heaviness and taking responsibility for things that you don't need to be responsible for. Because as humans, whether it's relationships or not, we're always going through experiences that evolve us, that we learn from. And so if we're constantly looking back and being angry with ourselves for not being perfect, I think we're really missing the point there.
Yeah, and feeling we need to be responsible for his emotional choices, for his commitment or lack of, or these people will often make you feel bad. They'll say, well, it's your fault for X, Y, Z. And like, what can we do about that? What can we do for ourselves? What if you have an aha moment? And it'll be like being your best friend, sitting down, writing yourself a letter, talking to yourself daily, talking to your best friend who can just look at the situation without being so heart involved in the relationship, heart involved for you as a human being, and making choices from that point. We have those intuitive moments where we're just like, something is not right. And I think it's becoming integral that we take those moments and move with them. Like so many of us go.
I was in a relationship where I kept asking him about a specific person. Are you cheating on me with so-and-so? Are you cheating on me with so-and-so? And the thing that gets me now, looking back, is he never said no. He said things like, what makes you think I'd be cheating? Or I don't remember all the things he said, to be honest, but it was always like a deflection. So it addressed it, but it was never him saying no. So he didn't lie to me. He just moved away from the question, right? He like threw it back on me. Anyway, you do have to trust that, because it eventually came out months later that he was. And that I had felt crazy for so long.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think. I don't know when we were ever wrong. Like when we feel that or we know that, it's just a matter of time for the information to turn up, and we need to bank on ourselves. Like this guy banked on himself. All of these people who have behaved in the ways that you suspect them of, that eventually comes out, they banked on themselves as being okay. They knew they were going to be okay. And I think it's so important for us to, like, that's why we have these conversations, to realize we're going to be okay, to realize we're going to be safe. We're going to be emotionally safe. We can get through this. I can do hard things. I can get to the other side of this. The woman who's going to be on the other side of this situation, problem, experience, relationship, the emotions, the psychological, the everything, you're going to be okay. You need to reach out and talk to somebody, or pat yourself on the back and have a glass of wine. Do something that validates your thoughts and feelings, because the minute that you bank on yourself, just as much as that guy's banking on himself as doing the right thing, the minute you bank on yourself as knowing that's a game, or I'm uncomfortable, or something's not right, and you step back for a second and acknowledge that, that's the minute you start to win. That's the minute that if you're in a toxic situation, you're going to be able to move yourself out of it, because you said yes to yourself. You banked on yourself. And if we see some of the assumptions we've made, like if we think, is he being honest, or is he playing games? And if you have answers that indicate yes, it's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. Like, you're allowed to say no now. You're allowed to have full consent over your body, over your relationships, over your time, over your emotional state of being. You're allowed to walk away at any point in time. Like, you can leave a 20-year marriage. You can leave a 20-minute date. There is actually no rules apart from the ones that you create. And I think inside that, we can create so much freedom for ourselves. And I know that typically this conversation, somebody will go, if he's saying this, this is what you need to do. And I know that Sarah and I don't have those specifics, because there are no template rules. You actually have the answers. This is why coaching works. This is why consultancy work, which is what I do, works, because you have the answers about your wardrobe. You have the answers about your emotional state of being. You have the answers about your I was going to say emotional relationships, but they are. Like, you actually know. Like, if you stepped back and went on a silent retreat for 7 weeks or something, that would be so wonderful. I don't know why I said 7 weeks. Obviously, I'm tired. I meant to say 7 days. You would interesting answers that would come to the surface. The information is there. And it's so good to expose yourself to new things, like, looking at a TikTok if it triggers you, if you need to cry, if you need to talk to a friend, if you need to write yourself a dear lover letter to yourself and say, hey, babe, I really feel like this man is doing this, or I'm feeling in this regard, or this is where I'm at. And it's okay to hold yourself accountable without hurting yourself and berating yourself and being like, oh, that whole time, or I've really banked on him. You can quit. You can say no. You can move forward. The dress can go back to the tailors. The ring can go back to the jeweler. You can sell it somewhere else. Like, there is no too late.
Yeah. Well, thank you for chatting about this today. I hope that everybody watching can now feel comfortable and confident, like reflecting on these previous relationships and noticing where these things happened, and also just letting go. of what part isn't theirs, because I think that is the part that keeps us from moving on and keeps us from creating healthier future relationships, is because we just hold on to these issues. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. You can like the episode, subscribe to our channel for future episodes, or leave a comment below. And we'll see you next week.